The following recording is a part of Skift's Travels Path Forward series of online summits. To discover and register for future events, visit forum.skift.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to from Skift to Travels Path Forward Online Travel. This is part of Skift's series of virtual discussions as we host as a rapid response of tactical ideas, analysis, and resilience to the industry as it responds to its greatest crisis. We'd like to thank all of the incredible speakers for sharing their time and perspectives today, and we'd also like to thank Critio for being today's sponsor. Before we begin, we just want to let you know that Skift Global Forum, the flagship global conference of the business of travel, will take place as an online global conference this year, September 21st to 23rd, live US Eastern time zone. This will be available live throughout that day and then on demand the next day. This year, we're taking a doors wide open policy for an industry that needs it, and our ticketing pricing reflects this policy in an effort to make it affordable for the widest possible industry participation. We hope that you can join us. So now we will be also recording this event today, and the interviews for archival on our website should you miss any of these discussions. So to kick things off, please join me in welcoming Skift's Editor-in-Chief, Tom Lowry.
Good morning, thank you. As Brian mentioned, I'm Tom Lowry. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Skift. And welcome to our online travel summit today. We've got some great sessions ahead for you. But before we get going, I just want to highlight some of the important things that we've been busy working on here at Skift. Since the pandemic began, we have posted literally hundreds of stories outlining coronavirus's impact on the travel industry. And that includes some of the great work being done by our other properties, EventMB and Skift Airline Weekly. In addition to that, we have launched a live blog that our global editors and reporters feed 24/7 with Skift stories and stories from elsewhere. So I'm sure you've seen that. That's been up and running for several months now. We have the reopening timeline, which is a chronology of reopenings in the travel industry, destinations, businesses. Unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, there's been some reclosings that we've had to document as part of that, but also just a very important read for you. That is updated around the clock as well. In addition to that, we have had these online summits. We've been hosting those since the pandemic began. Today is the last of those for the summer as we prepare for the Skift Global Forum, which Brian mentioned earlier in September. We're hoping that the online format is actually an opportunity for us this year to make the forum feel even more global in that respect. In addition, I'd be remiss not to mention our colleagues at Skift Research, who have also been very busy during this pandemic. We are now tracking something called the Travel Tracker Survey, where we are gauging consumer sentiment and their travel plans on a monthly basis. So look for that. We have the Travel Recovery Index, which starting this week will now we'll go from 15 countries to 22 countries, tracking metrics in those places in terms of where they are with their recovery efforts. And launching just this morning is the Skift Health Score, which we're really excited about, which tracks what we are calling the survivability or viability of 100 public travel companies. So look for that today. That's a brand new product from our colleagues at Skift Research. And last but not least is Skift Pro, which is our new membership-only news service that we launched in the last couple of weeks that we're really excited about. Literally for the cost of a cup of coffee a day, $1 to be exact, we provide exclusive access to our independent and exclusive news content. And just this week, we are excited that we launched our first editorial offering just for our Skift Pro members. This is the Dennis Online Travel Briefing, brought to you by Dennis Schall, who is our founding and executive editor. Many of you know Dennis. He has been covering the industry for years, decades, I might say. He wouldn't hear that, but I consider him to be the foremost journalist covering the industry anywhere. So that's a really important addition to our coverage and very relevant for today's session. With that, I will thank you once again for supporting Skift's independent research and independent journalism moving forward, and enjoy today's summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So we're going to move right into our first discussion. How is metasearch shifting out of this crisis with CEO of Kayak and OpenTable, Steve Hafner, and also Skift founding editor Dennis and executive editor Dennis Shaw. I should mention this was pre-recorded. Steve had a shift in his schedule for this week, so we wanted to make sure we could capture it, so we had to pre-record. First time we're doing this, but please enjoy. We wanted to make sure we got his words in, so thank you so much.
Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us. Much appreciated.
It's my pleasure, Dennis.
So I remember going to a conference in around 2006, 2007. Kayak had been formed, I think, in 2004. And it was funny because you got up there and you said, metasearch is a really lousy business to be in. The margins are so slow. It's a volume business. But now everybody's in the tank. But how do you view Kayak and metasearch coming out of this crisis? Is it more relevant, less relevant? What's your view of going forward?
Sure. I think metasearch was very relevant then, and my remarks at that time were designed to scare off competition. Didn't work out very well, but we did okay nonetheless. Look, metasearch has a very strong consumer value prop, right? It shows them all their travel options, helps them find the lowest price, that's which is interesting to them, or the highest service level, and then gives them choice on where to book, either supplier direct and or OTA. And I think what we've learned through this crisis is that the metasearch model still is really important on all those dimensions, but it can do a lot more too. So as airlines implement different safety measures in terms of boarding and, is the middle seat open or not? If they have different cancellation policies, all those things in addition to just fares are really important. So Meta, we can quickly implement and show that information to consumers much faster than any individual airline, or certainly most OTAs who are pretty slow to move. The second thing the crisis taught us was booking direct can really help you out a lot of times. A lot of people who chose second tier OTAs kind of got stranded when it came time to try to get home early or break non-refundable policies.
Okay, so you mean booking direct on airline sites or on hotel sites?
Exactly.
Right.
Versus going through an intermediary.
Well, I was going to ask you because last week Skyscanner had some news. They started taking direct bookings from, I think, Aeroflot and WestJet. And I remember when Ctrip, now Trip.com, bought Skyscanner, there was a lot of speculation that they were going to turn Skyscanner into a booking site. But you've always been sort of down or kind of were skeptical about the game-changing aspect of direct bookings on metasearch sites. So do you think it's folly for Skyscanner to go down this path at this time, or how do you view it?
I mean, I think what I've consistently said is I think the best outcome would be a hybrid OTA meta experience, which is, hey, we show you everything. We're agnostic about where you book. But if you want to stay within our experience, which a lot of people do, you can do that. And it's a frictionless path. You have a single account to manage. We can store your credit card, all that stuff, which is why Kayak many, many years ago debuted Book on Kayak. And what you were really doing is you were booking through our experience, but the actual reservation was being made on a third-party system, and any customer service was being provided by that third-party system. And I think that's still probably the right course of action, and that's why we stuck with it.
And how much are you into it now? Is this priority, or how much direct booking are you doing at this point for flights and hotels?
We're doing a lot of direct booking, but we've actually seen the number come down. So it's less than 10% of our transactions are direct booked on us within our experience. It's obviously a higher number on mobile than it is on desktop.
Right.
I think since the pandemic hit, we've seen a shift towards more supplier direct bookings than even from our own experience.
Right. There was a lot of talk, years ago about hybrid OTA metasearch models, and that would be the thing, but it doesn't really seem to have happened to a large extent.
Well, the reality is most consumers are very comfortable booking supplier direct. they just don't trust them as a destination site to show them everything.
Right.
You need to search somewhere else. And they're also comfortable booking at a big OTA. But again, they don't trust them to show them everything. So they need to go do their shopping somewhere, and that's on a MetaSearch site. And then when they're ready to book, they go someplace they're very comfortable using.
Right. So what are you seeing now in terms of query volumes and domestic versus international on Kayak at this moment in time? What trends are you seeing? Or is there so little going on?
Well, sure. So it's pretty straightforward. We made our data set at Kayak available for anyone to take a look at the trends, but it varies a lot week by week. But there's three pretty straightforward trends. First is domestic is recovering more or less strongly than international, just because there aren't a whole heck of a lot of places Americans can go these days, particularly to Europe.
Right.
And even the places they go to, they have to self-quarantine for 14 days. The second is domestically, people are looking for shorter flights, nonstop flights nearby to non-crowded destinations where they can actually do stuff. So, depending on what's happening with COVID case counts and government restrictions, you can see Miami spike up or go down. You can see Las Vegas spike up or go down. And these are all trends that we're monitoring. But again, anyone who's watching can look at our data sets and see it too.
You can see the COVID cases spiking up and spiking down as well. So you talked about how things are changing week to week. So in April, you guys had to lay off or furlough about 400 people. But in June, I think I talked to you and you had started bringing people back, maybe 40 employees. You said mostly open table. Has that continued? Because things have sort of, the demand has sort of worsened in the meantime. So what's going on there?
So we're bringing people back from furlough as our workload goes up. And obviously our workload goes up as restrictions loosen and travel demand of restaurants come back. So far, I think actually we brought back a little over 50 people now, mostly on the restaurant side of the business because our restaurant customers are opening up, but quite a few on the Kayak commercial side too. So look, we're just like everyone else looking to see what happens week by week. And as our people get overwhelmed with work, which is what we want people to be overwhelmed with work, then we bring their colleagues back.
I see you started a road trips option, search option. Is that working out? I guess it's mostly really a hotel search, right? I mean, it's things to do. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, look, what we've always prided ourselves on at Kayak is product innovation. And if, historically we were a flight meta site and then we morphed into other verticals. There's not a whole lot of flying right now. People have a strong preference to drive someplace nearby. That's why we made our homepage rental cars, which I never thought was going to happen, but that's our homepage. And just providing them a rental car isn't enough. They want ideas. So we drafted and created this new product called Road Trips, which in a given travel radius shows you all the cool things you can do and also shows you the price of accommodations and the price of a rental car to go see those places. Right. So I think we launched that like 2 weeks ago and it's getting good traction.
So Steve, you have, in addition to Kayak, I guess is mostly US based, but you also have Momondo and cheap flights in Europe and hotels combined in Asia. Are you seeing, those regions pick up more than you're seeing in the US, or how's it going over there?
Yeah, the trend is pretty clear, which is anytime case counts go down and governments reopen, travel demand goes up. So, in Europe, in Germany, and Denmark, and a few other countries, we're seeing travel demand come back. It's different, of course. It involves less international travel and more domestic. In Asia, for sure, we've seen travel demand rebound. And in some cases, it's actually running above where it was this time last year.
Steve, I saw in an interview you did about a month ago that Kayak was hit a lot harder than Open Table because of all the cancellations. So how do cancellations impact Kayak's business if you're doing mostly referrals? Are you having to make good on some of those clicks that led to canceled bookings, or how did that work?
Sure. So the way the Kayak business was impacted differently than Open Table is even though we had a dramatic reduction in our query volume in Kayak in terms of travel intent, some of our commercial relationships are on a cost per acquisition basis. Okay. So as consumers canceled, that took revenue away that we thought we had earned in prior periods from current periods. The other part that hurt us a bit was partners going bankrupt. and then not paying open invoices for amounts and services that we had already provided to them.
What kind of partners were going bankrupt? Hotels, or was it a variety?
Less so on the supplier side, more second level OTAs, primarily in Europe.
Right, got it. Did you happen to catch on Friday night, TripAdvisor announced that they'd name Trip.com CEO Jane Sun to the board, and Trip.com had taken a 5% stake in TripAdvisor. What's the over-under on TripAdvisor getting acquired by Trip.com one of these days?
Look, I think there's a good industrial logic for TripAdvisor aligning forces with one or more OTAs. It would be kind of interesting to see them align with Trip.com, given that historically they were spun out of Expedia.
Right.
But look, in the travel business, there's always an ever-moving landscape of people doing business together and partnering and yet competing in other aspects. So I wasn't surprised to see a greater tie-up there. If there is an acquisition, hopefully it'll come at a higher price than what TripAdvisor is currently trading at, because I think the business is worth more.
Right. Wow. Vote of confidence in TripAdvisor there. So I noticed the other day that Expedia's homepage, it's at least the version I'm seeing, doesn't list hotels anymore. It just lists stays, instead of hotels and vacation rentals. What does that mean for Kayaks business? I mean, you've been trying to get more, you do have some apartments and vacation rentals. I know you've invited Brian Chesky to call you anytime he wants, if he wants to partner, but how does this whole metamorphosis impact Kayak?
Well, I think everybody in the travel space who offers hotels and is also starting to offer non-hotel accommodations is struggling with the right way to present those two choices to consumers, because they're very different products. And, our sister company, Booking.com, actually calls their accommodation vertical now stays as well. So I think stays is the word that people are starting to lean towards, at least English-speaking websites. I wouldn't be surprised if Kayak adopts that standard pretty soon too. But at the same time, we also have a separate tab called vacation rentals, because some people just think of vacation rentals as being very different from even a non-hotel or hotel business, since that's usually entire properties. So we'll see what works. But like everything else, people will think the way to do it.
Speaking of Airbnb and Brian Chesky, are you buying Brian Chesky's argument that travel is forever changed, that it will be redistributed to apartments and vacation rentals in remote places and resort towns away from the big cities, or are we going to be back to fairly normal in a couple of years from now?
Forever is a long time, as my ex-wife used to tell me. So I don't think travel's forever changed. I think it's changed a lot in the near term, and we'll see how much of that sticks around and is durable. But I do think it's opened up consumers' eyes to off-beaten track accommodations, off-beaten track destinations, and we'll see how long that persists. And my challenge as the CEO of Kayak and of OpenTable as well is to make sure that we have products and services that resonate with our partners and with consumers that reflect the current shift in preferences. But forever, I don't know. Forever is a long time.
Totally. Coming out of the pandemic, coming into a recovery, in terms of, do you see companies like Google becoming even stronger in travel? I noticed, it seems most people think Booking Holdings will come out stronger than Expedia, for example. So how do you see things shaping up?
Generally, in terms of a crisis, the strong survive it, and in some areas they get even stronger. And then you get a whole raft of new upstarts and new thinking into a category too, right? So I think it's usually a kind of a barbell approach, and the folks that are in the middle are in a tough spot. And that's certainly what's been happening on the supplier side, particularly for struggling airlines, as well as for tier 2 OTAs. I'm less concerned about the strong getting stronger. I'm really interested in what new stuff is being worked on that resonates with consumers.
So speaking of working on, while we're in this phase that we're in now, has this, with demand not being as strong as everyone would like, has this been an opportunity for Kayak to work on certain things that maybe you didn't get a chance to work on before, or how have you been spending your time, Steve?
Absolutely. I mean, we had already defined 2020 as the year of the product internally. So, when we had to make those unfortunate headcount changes, that didn't really touch our product or tech functions. That was the lightest affected group. And what those people have been working on is furthering our long-term vision. So that's why, some things you've seen us launch in the last few weeks are 3 new verticals, right? Kayak at home, road trips, and kayak essentials, which is, internally we call it meta search for toilet paper. But anyway, it shows you like there's a lot of innovation going on, and soon we're going to announce our first forays into the hotel business. So, keep your eyes out for that. Don't worry, we'll let you know about it, Dennis, in advance. But there's an awful lot of innovation happening right now because we're not distracted by the commercial part of the business of responding to, tens of millions of queries per day.
So we're going to see some Kayak branded hotels?
I wouldn't be surprised if you did. Let's put it that way.
Huh, interesting. That's intriguing. So, pre-pandemic, and even, as recently as the first quarter earnings call, Booking Holdings has been talking about the connected trip. And, Kayak had, for a while, was providing, flight search for Booking Holdings. But in the meantime, Booking Holdings has, tourism activities, they've sort of outsourced to TUI and Musement. Where do you, is this kind of like do you think this is off the agenda for now for the parent company, or where do you think that stands?
Well, I think the vision for the parent company for Booking Holdings is to help everyone more easily experience the world. So I think we're very keen to have good product offerings in every vertical that helps people do that. The timing on which we do that under which brand, I think, is all subject to change and market conditions. But my job at Kayak is to make sure, from a meta point of view, that we're providing great services for consumers, and then internally within Booking Holdings, make those services available to our sister brands to use at their desired pace and speed.
Right.
And that's what we've done.
So, part of the connected trip, and when Booking Holdings acquired OpenTable, there was it was seen as a bold move. I guess it was 2014, that there would be a synergy between dining and travel, and of course, everybody wants to go on vacation and everybody's looking for, great restaurants, but that synergy hasn't really played out as deeply as we might have imagined, right? I mean, you just mentioned that the various brands in Booking Holdings can, for example, put, a dining option as they wish, So is the synergy between dining and travel not as great as it was touted to be?
Well, look, every traveler has to eat, but the reality of the time, most people aren't traveling. So for your average restaurant, 97% of their business is going to be locals, right? Outside of, some big tourist destinations like London and New York and Barcelona, for example. So we always knew that if the synergy was going to happen, it was going to happen in those big tourist destinations. And we're seeing positive indicators for that, So if Booking.com shows an OpenTable restaurant to their users, they'll get bookings out of it. But for OpenTable to succeed, it's not really about our integration with Booking.com. It's about getting restaurants to adopt our product and then getting local residents to use it.
Right.
It's not about the commerce.
All right. Coming out of in the recovery or coming out of the pandemic, do you think loyalty is going to play a larger role, or Booking.com has the Genius program, loyalty program, or do you think it's going to be more of a free for all, people looking for deals and brand loyalty cast aside? How do you view that?
I think everyone's been wrestling with the loyalty question for years, and I don't think anyone's cracked it. I think the brand that's probably done the best job is actually Hotels.com in terms of having loyalty propositions is very straightforward. Book 10 times, get one night free.
Right.
So you know, I think all of our brands are looking at that across the travel industry, and you're going to see some more aggressive moves out of the players coming out of this, because you know nobody just wants to spend their money on Google.
Right. Kayak wouldn't form any kind of launch any kind of a loyalty program, would you?
You know, we've talked about it for a long, long time.
Really?
It's unclear to me how we actually, despite our intelligence, pull that caper off, because you know we don't have that many credit cards from users. We don't require logins. We don't have a lot of margin to play with because we're relatively low priced. So it's tough for me to get my head around, but that doesn't mean that we won't do it. We're looking at all kinds of things. You know, OpenTable does have a very successful loyalty program. We have tied that into Kayak. So if you book on within our Kayak experience, you get OpenTable points, for example. But you know, I think there's probably a lot more that could be done. But do I want to compete against American Airlines for loyalty points? Probably not.
So when I stay at a Kayak branded hotel, I'm not going to get loyalty points?
It depends. You might not get loyalty points, but you might get a welcome beverage in the OpenTable restaurant that's housed on site.
Oh, there you go. Hey, Steve, one last question. I saw that you guys had, for a while, you had a Black Lives Matter banner on Kayak. Was there thoughts about, you know, the downsides of getting too political, or you thought it was that important to do?
Well, we've always been very committed at Kayak and OpenTable to having a workforce that reflects the values of a diverse and inclusive community, and that reflects the communities that are global that we live and work in. So for us, it was I don't want to call it a no-brainer because that oversimplifies it, but we knew it was the right thing to do, and so we did it. And you know, a month later, we, as we normally do, rotated that message over to supporting the Pride community.
Right.
So we'll continue to have messages like that where we think it's appropriate to do so in times of you know, great social unrest. And I didn't see it, neither does anybody else at Kayak and OpenTable, as a political message. We're not politics at our companies. We're about opening people's eyes and having them travel around the world and for the betterment of themselves and their fellow citizens. So it's just the right thing to do.
Very much keeping with the promise of travel. So thanks, Steve. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. So as a reminder, we did have a pre-record that one, but all further discussions in this webinar today are live. So next up, we'll have a discussion on the rise and uncertainty of domestic travel in Asia, featuring Agoda VP of Corporate Development, Timothy Hughes, and moderated by Skift Editor-at-Large, Raini Hamdi.
Hello. Thank you, Tim.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi, yeah, for being with us today. Yeah, at this hour. Yeah, so.
No problem, very happy to be here.
Okay, so I was just wondering, you know, how COVID-19 is changing the competition among OTAs in Asia. I mean, what are OTAs competing for now when there's no inbound, there's no outbound? And so is it just domestic market, or are you already scavenging for international forward bookings?
Sure. I mean, we've just got to acknowledge how hard and tough this is. I mean, this is a really just tough time for everybody. You know, I live and walk the streets of Bangkok, and I see a lot of 5-star hotels with every light out. And all I can think about is the bartenders and the baristas and the maids and the doormen and the sales managers who aren't able to go to work. And I'm just brutalized by it. So I think first we've just got to acknowledge that. But if we step back from that human element, which is hard to, and we think about what's going on, the phrase I'm tending to use at the moment is that we're at the beginning of the recovery. We're not yet ready to use the word recovery. We're a long way away from that. But we're seeing things that indicate the robustness of the traveler, the insatiable desire of the consumer to travel. But they can only go so far. And that means for the most basis in Asia, they can only go domestic. And Asia's got a bit of a first in, first out thing going, in the sense that a lot of the Asian countries were the first ones into this crisis, and therefore they're the first ones out of it. You can point particularly to, you know, Taiwan, Korea, China, and to a lesser extent, but now happening in places like Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. And so those places are seeing, and you know, Steve talked about it in his comments, and my comments will be similar. In those places, sometimes, some weekends, we are seeing year-on-year growth. in domestic, actually bigger than last year in domestic, as all those people who were locked down in their homes are just desperate to get out and see some sunshine, see some forest, see some beach, see some ocean, breathe some air.
Would you say that the domestic market is already like maybe 50% back from what it was before in Asia?
I don't want to put a number on it because it does depend on the country, and we could literally do a whole 45 minutes just on Korea or just on Vietnam. But there are pockets and there are zones in which we are seeing clear year-on-year growth in domestic as consumers, who have been locked down for so long, see a little release and are desperate to get out there and have a break.
Right. So, but what's driving that? What's your key to grabbing as much sales, either domestic or forward international bookings? Is it all about price positioning? I mean, I see trip.com, for instance, I'm launching travel on campaign and doing English language in destination live streams for the first time in Thailand and in Singapore, and apparently, offering 60% discount on hotels, getting a lot of sales, and your Go Local campaign offers up to 25% discounts. So is it all about price competition, or and should it be?
Price is certainly a factor. The consumers are also confronting whatever economic circumstances they're confronting, and some of that is tough. But it is by no means the only factor, and it might not even be the only factor, the majority factor. There are so many other things at play. We've got lead times have shrunk dramatically and lengthened at the same time. So a lot of the bookings are happening immediately, like today for today, today for tomorrow, and they're also going a long way out, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So it's also about the properties having availability managed to the last minute. It's also a lot about the sort of packages that are being offered. A lot of these are families trying to escape. Families have different needs. A lot of these are people looking for more than just a straight out hotel room. They want an experience. We've also got things on flexibility. There's an absolute critical criteria that consumers have the chance to change their mind. So we've created a product called Easy Cancel. Competitors have similar names, but the gist of it and the core of it is the ability for the consumer to have that flexibility. So price is critical, flexibility is critical, lead time is critical, that the packages you've created are attractive and tell a story about taking that break, getting that extra moment in the sun or in the forest are also critical. So it's a mix of a series of things, but clearly price is an important part of that.
So how's your Go Local campaign doing? What kind of sales are you achieving with that?
Sure.
About 1.5 months.
In earnings season, the last thing I want to do is quote some numbers, but I will say this. I'll say it's important for us to know it was important for us to execute on something that was more than just price driven, because we had to tell consumers what was going on. So we had to create content, emotionally connected content that told people what it was like to go on holidays at home, what it was like to travel the world nearby. And we had to create content. We had to spend money on that. We had to spend time on it. We had to create products to suit this need of shorter lead times, of people who were thinking about different destinations around them rather than specific destinations. We had to make sure we were able to cope with bookings up to the last second of check-in. So we had to do a lot of development work, a lot of product work, a lot of marketing work, had to work very closely with our hotel partners to help make sure they were all set for this. And so it took a lot of time and effort and money to make sure the Go Local program worked.
A lot of the hotels in Asia are more dependent on inbound. What have you got to do in order to attune them to domestic market?
This is really hard, because the thing about the domestic market is it's changed the definition of the top 10 cities in the country. Often you could, anyone who hadn't traveled could pick the top 10 destination in most countries because it's the capital city. But domestic travel of this type, it doesn't necessarily feed the capital city. It's people in Bangkok wanting to get out, people in Ho Chi Minh City wanting to get out, people in Sydney wanting to get out. So a lot of that business has shifted to the drive market, to the sort of 3.5 hour, 4 hour travel circle around the city. And that's really hard if you are a big box MICE hotel in Bangkok, in Tokyo, in Seoul. And for the most part, unfortunately, those hotels are still turned off. They're still blacked out. Because the business that they need, the weddings, the dentist conventions, the physical travel conventions that people used to do, that business is not there yet. Now, people are trying creative things. I've seen lots of creative staycation packages, day packages, and so forth, and I think that's great. We've also seen a lot of properties shift to try and focus on F&B. get the restaurants back open, switch to delivery. You know, we're seeing 5-star hotels do delivery and takeout. They've never done that before. We've seen that across parts of Asia, and try and revitalize at least some of their business through food and beverage. But we also just have to acknowledge, if you are a 1,000 room MICE hotel in a capital city in Asia, there's not an easy solution until that business travel can return.
Right. So is all your focus on domestic travel right now, or what do you do with international? Is just put on ice?
Well, no, you always be prepared, and you always got a plan, and we're an international company, so we can do that. But for now, if you're in the travel industry, you just got to be thinking about what you need to do tomorrow, and what you need to do tomorrow is to drive domestic business, because that's where the traveler is. And the traveler, I think Steve hinted on this too, the traveler is reacting very, very quickly. So, if the rules change and the lockdown eases in a market, the travelers book the next day. They don't hesitate. We saw that a lot on the 1st of June, where 3 or 4 countries switched their lockdowns, and bang, the travelers were there to get in their cars and get in the train and get out of town. But equally, when things turn a little bit sour, and we've seen that, in Victoria in Australia, Victoria state of Australia, where we saw an outbreak, when things turn down, the consumers back off very quickly as well. So you've got to be super, super reactive to try and catch those waves as things get better. And then unfortunately, as things might get worse or turn the other way.
Right. I wanted to ask about the Asia Travel Technology Industry Association, which was by Agoda, Airbnb, Booking, and Expedia. Do you think it really has a chance to influence Asian governments to, coordinate and set consistent standards to reopen international tourism, or is just going to be another talk shop?
Oh, look, if there's one thing that COVID has said to us, it is that we are all in this together. This is a national problem, an international problem. It's a problem between governments, it's a problem for suppliers, a problem for distribution people. We have to work together. We're already doing that. A lot of great work is being done by governments and OTAs to work together. Thailand has just completed its program for support of domestic. I know Japan's about to launch one. I think Singapore has announced a fund to launch its support. And each of the OTAs and all the suppliers have got to be on board to support that. And it's critical that the supply side, the distribution side, the government side are having a dialogue constantly on what needs to be done to get the travelers back in their cars and booking again. Okay.
I also wanted to ask, so now the business is a lot smaller. Teams are also a lot smaller. I mean, Agoda have had to let go 1,500 staff, and that's a quarter of your workforce. Of course, you're not alone. I mean, we had Skyscanner, Expedia, TripAdvisor, and so on. They've had to lay off staff also in Asia Pacific. My question is, how do you reshape teams? And has there been any impact on, say, customer-facing or partner relations teams? I mean, you have 2.6 million hotels in over 200 countries. How do you service them with less feet on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, this is the human element I opened this discussion with. It's just devastating to have had to say goodbye to so many colleagues. And I just count myself incredibly lucky to still have a job in travel in 2020. It's an absolute blessing and luck. Tragically, unfortunately, a lot of those jobs were tied to volume. Customer care teams and similar sized teams are simply scaled up with the volume of the business. So if there are less customers calling, that just unfortunately means there are less people needed to deal with those calls, and that's calls both on the hotel side and on the customer side. So a lot of that is just business that unfortunately naturally scales. On the sort of getting stuff done, so our SLAs for our customers on both sides of the aisle, be it the customer who's booking or the hotel, are the same, if not better, at the moment. So I've got no concerns about that. We've had to think about how to make sure product gets built properly. Steve touched on that as well, and I echo his comments that this is a time to get serious about product. Look at those things we thought we'd never have the time to build and focus on them. But no, I think it's clear to say the service levels we're giving are as good, if not better, than we were before this crisis.
Partners, okay. So you were talking about products, right? What the spirit of innovation? I mean, I suppose it's not been impacted by the layoffs, right? Because last year you added flights and packages and innovations like Mix and Save, which allows customers to change rooms during a stay, right? To get a cheaper deal. So when you were saying about developing products, what sort of products are you looking at?
Sure. That innovation, that creativity, and that thirst is still there. It's just the window for your execution timeline shortens dramatically. Like, we're not sitting here having discussions about something we're going to launch in the middle of 2021, having discussions about the things that we can do at the end of the next sprint. And we spent a lot of time on go local and easy cancel. They sound like easy things to do, but they did take a lot of product work, particularly to have an integrated approach to marketing and make sure that could get communicated to dozens of countries and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of hotels. So that took a lot of work. We also spent time on our connectivity, because now's a time in which you've got a connectivity teams that can get a lot more inventory connected, get a lot more access to content, get a lot more improvement and ramped up in the mobile features and functionality. But I think the biggest change, we could say the biggest change, was just the window in which we had to envision the products that had to come out the door. And that window was measured by single sprints rather than thinking about quarters out or even years out.
Right, okay. Because prior to COVID-19, Agoda said it has ambitions to lead in many Asian countries,
Sure.
markets by 2021. So is the pandemic a threat to achieve this goal, or do you see opportunities to accelerate the ambition?
No, look, I think Agoda's presence in Asia, is significant. We consider ourselves a substantial Asian travel company, and I think we've earned that through 15 plus years worth of work and effort. So I think our base there is strong. But this is the craziest industry in the world, right? Even outside of COVID, we could again spend 40 minutes just talking about the competitive challenges that Agoda faces. And inside COVID, we have to confront those same competitive challenges, plus the worst crisis since World War II. So this is a tough business. We are well set up. We work hard. We've got a great team, but we're under no illusions about the difficulty and the challenge faced by everybody, whether they're in Asia or not, in facing off competition and also surviving this crisis.
Okay. Well, I've been told to stop at 10:42, which is now.
Oh, no, we were having fun. I was enjoying myself.
Thank you so much, Tim, for being here.
My pleasure. I look forward to next time. I know, and all my best to everybody in the travel industry. I hope one day we get to see each other again soon and do this face to face the proper way.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy and Riney, for joining us today. Next up, we have a discussion we'll jump right into with Google Managing Director for Travel, Rob Torres, and moderated once again by Skift founding editor and executive editor, Dennis Shaw.
Rob, how you doing? Thanks so much for being here.
I'm doing terrific. Can you hear me? All good?
Yes. Yep. All good. So
excellent.
I enjoyed that last session with Tim and Riney. That was great. I heard Tony Fernandez of Air Asia say once, "Never waste a good crisis." So what has it been like running Google's travel advertising program at a time when most travel advertising shut down? I know Google has been busy with some product tweaks, like in search emphasizing flexible cancellation policies and things like that. But how has Google adapted to this crisis?
Well, you said it. I mean, it's been difficult for all, and certainly at Google, we have felt the effects as many of our partners have. Obviously not in the same way in some instances, but it has definitely been tough. And, being a part of this business for 20 plus years and being at Google Travel for almost 14 or over 14 now, this is obviously the toughest situation I've ever seen. We obviously hope for, growth and recovery like everyone else, but, we do use this opportunity to really take a look at what's happening and find out how we can help all of our partners through the recovery. We're seeing this pandemic has really shifted consumer behavior. Don't know if that is for good or if this is short term, but we've seen so many differences, in what people are searching for. Initially, and I think somebody said this, is we saw a 15x increase in people searching for anything around flight cancellations. Well, luckily that's changed now, but social distancing is really influencing the types of trips people are searching for. They're searching for vacations near me and beach vacations, small town, mountains, all of those type of things. And so we're really helping our partners understand, where they can see hopeful potential rebounds through data and insights. And that's really what we're focusing on, is how do we help them through data and insights and understanding what's happening, and making, like you alluded to, some enhancements to our products that can help during this time frame. You know, we've, in terms of data and insights, obviously we're staying on top of these insights and providing this information to our partners. I think you're familiar with our the Demand Explorer tool. We've rolled that out more broadly now, which really helps people understand, you know, consumer demand via this Google Flight Search aggregated data. That's helping. We also launched these community mobility reports. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're actual, you can go by country, by city, by state, and see what is trending in terms of people's visitation to local restaurants, you know, parks, theaters, etc., that may influence where people will start traveling to. So we're really trying to get this data, you know, right in front of all of our partners to help them understand where there might be opportunity now. And we've been busier than ever, you know, working with our partners hand in hand to help them where we can. And you know, like you said, I think a good crisis is a time to really take a look at the back end engine as well. And, you know, are we using automation effectively? Because I think that's a good way to understand where I can find profitable demand, even though demand might be way down. And so we're certainly helping our partners with that as well.
One of the things that interested me, and I hope we can dig into it a little bit, is you expanded a program that I guess you had before, the paper stay policy or paper stay program for hotel partners around the world. And as I understand it, what it is hotels can set a commission price instead of you know, bidding on a cost per click that might lead not to a booking, or might actually lead to a canceled booking. So tell us about that program a little bit and what it does.
Absolutely. I think it's a great program. I mean, as I shared, you know, we started to see a lot of cancellations early on, and our hotel partners were very concerned, you know, with, you know, how do we come back when we don't know if there's going to be a consumed stay or not? So we accelerated the rollout of our commission product for hotel ads, and it is a pay per stay. So now partners have the option of choosing to pay only for consumed bookings. It's very similar to what was already available in the industry at large, where yes, you know, the partner will decide on the commission that they are willing to pay for that booking, and then it runs through the hotel ads auction. So it really does take that risk of cancellation out of the picture. So hopefully this takes you know, some of the pressure off some of our partners in preventing them from wanting to come back and take advantage of some of those opportunities that do exist. Certainly, you know, in certain regions, as we've heard from both before, you know, we're seeing pockets of demand come back, and some more than others. And this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that. It does require a conversion tracking and some other things, so it's not for everybody, but it's definitely a choice that our partners have. And it's something that they've been asking for a long time. And I think, you know, you and I have even talked about similar models like this in the past. But, you know, with what had happened with COVID, it just pushed us to move quicker on this, to really roll this out. And a lot of partners have been very thankful and have been taking advantage of it.
So is it mostly like smaller hotels that are using this, smaller OTAs? Are the bigger, you know, are the Expedias of the world and the Booking.coms of the world using this? And why not? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's available for anybody, right?
Right.
It's hopefully to help small partners all the way up to the big ones. And you know, right now we're just seeing you know, early interest among all of those groups. You know, unfortunately, it does take some specific requirements, like, you know, tracking and putting the pixel and those type of things. So it doesn't just happen overnight. And so that is why sometimes we see some of the bigger partners, the more technically advanced, jump on this stuff earlier. But we continue to make it easier and easier and simpler for everyone to be involved. So I can see a lot.
What does it mean for Google? I imagine you make more money on the CPC program than this?
Well, it just depends over time what will happen. You know, I don't know. No, right now this is, you know, the usage is very small on the PP, on the commission product. You know, the PPC is really a product that we're used to and still primarily use. And so we'll see over time. But, I think we need to have options across the board for our partners. And, not having this option actually did prevent some people from participating. So hopefully we will get, more folks on board and working with us. And that's really the goal, is to let everyone who's interested in participating have an opportunity to do so.
Rob, as you know, no conferences, no travel conferences complete without a good Google conspiracy theory about becoming an OTA. So this conspiracy theory goes like this, that the pay-per-stay program makes Google more like an OTA. You're collecting commissions. And here you have small hotels who are probably paying Google lower commissions than they would have to pay to Expedia or Booking.com. So you start with them. You don't start with, Marriott and Hilton per se, but maybe you market this to some of the franchise owners, you automate the whole process, and boom, there go the OTAs. Did I nail that?
No. We want to have something for everyone. And I don't think that this changes, our mission or strategy or whatsoever, or how we look at the world. I think it just honestly offers up another opportunity. It's a similar product to what was out there. We aren't a merchant of record. It's not a merchant product. It's commission-based. It's collected after the stay. And the partner gets to set what they want to pay for that, and there's still going to be an auction process in the back end, right? So, whatever they're effectively, willing to pay will depend on how much demand they get as well. So, they will be able to set it, but, we'll see where it goes. But, I don't think that changes anything in terms of how people look at us or should look at us. I think it's just hopefully opening up another opportunity for others to participate that might haven't in the past.
I wanted to talk quickly about the Google Partner Recovery Program. Expedia has one, Airbnb has one, Booking.com does not have one. But for Google's Partner Recovery Program, you allocated $340 million, not just in travel, but across all your business. And that comes out to about less than 1% of Alphabet's first quarter revenue. So as you know, there were, some partners wanted more. There were companies in Germany and France that sent you letters. And I spoke to a couple of them yesterday, Get Your Guide and Omio in Berlin. And Get Your Guide said they negotiated a break of less than 10% on what they owed. And Omio said Google dragged out the negotiations and insisted on one-to-one negotiations, where they would have less leverage than if you implemented an industry-wide strategy. And both were unhappy. So the question is, couldn't Google have done more given all the resources that Google has?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question. We're certainly in this together with our partners, and we want to work hard to help them plan for recovery and do everything we can to do that. And we value the relationships that we've had. So, I can't comment on any specific direct relationships. But, we believe that, we're trying through the program you alluded to earlier that was for small businesses and offering them some support through the pay-per-stay program. We're trying to do what we can to actually help everyone get out of this. But ultimately, we're not immune. Google's not immune to what's happening in the global economy either. And, there's almost so much you can do. I think people are always going to say it's not enough, but we're certainly trying to do what we can. And like I said, my partners and my team are trying to work closer than ever with their partners and their partner teams to help them come through with this, stronger than ever.
I hear you. I know you're on the ad side of things, but can you talk at all about some of the product changes we might see in Google Travel going forward? I'm thinking of vacation rentals in particular. Vacation rentals is such a hot category now, and on the Google Travel homepage, it lists hotels. It doesn't list vacation rentals, although you've started a vacation rental program. The last time I heard it was, you hadn't monetized it yet. It was basically free for participants. So Is there any other thing along those lines we'll see, or anything with tours and activities that you can talk about?
Sure. I mean, you hit it. I mean, we're also seeing a huge increase in, query volume for people interested in searching for vacation rentals. And I think that has to do with the whole sheltering and people feeling that they're safer traveling 200 miles versus getting on a plane. And so that increase has obviously spurred our interest and many others in the space. Product itself, there's a few enhancements that have already rolled out. Overall, we're trying to add filters that allow you to search for cancellation policies, those type of things, COVID-19 information, latest destination filtering and showing up in search maps in hotels and flights. But on the vacation rentals product as all, we began rolling out a vacation rental product prior to COVID, and we continue to believe in that product and continue to add new features and enhancements. I don't have anything specific to share today, any big surprise launches, but I can tell you that it's definitely a growing area for us, and our product team is really focused on it. If Richard was here with me, he would tell you, it's a priority for ours right now is to really make sure that we're doing a difference and doing justice in that space. And I would argue the same with tours and attractions. That was something that was certainly big prior to COVID and will be prior afterwards. And it was something we've always had interest in and we're continuing to look at. We don't have anything specific to share today on that side either, but hopefully, as the product continues to work, and that is on our roadmap for 20 and 21 to continue to look at both vacation rental and tours and attractions. And so I believe you'll see something.
We'll definitely see something, I'm sure. Hey, so we had the Booking.com CMO on, we had a Skift Forum Europe Summit a month ago, and he said, Booking Holdings had dropped out of Google Vacation Rentals. Tim's Agoda had participated in it before, but he said he was open to rejoining it. He came from Google, but then there's another segment of the travel industry that wants to reduce its reliance on Google. Expedia has a new CEO who sees it as a strategic imperative to, he's still going to play with Google. He doesn't want to shoot himself in the foot, but he wants to reduce his reliance on Google. So what do you say to partners or would-be partners in the travel industry that want to reduce their reliance on Google?
Well, I would tell them, and I do tell them, that that's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, you should be looking for the opportunity for profitable leads, profitable demand where it is. And certainly with our model, I mean, you set your profitability targets. And so it should, in the end, be beneficial to you. And if it's not beneficial to you, then you probably shouldn't be leveraging as much as you are with one area. And overall, that's what I would say. We work so closely with everyone, and we want to continue to work closely with everyone, big and large. And the partners you mentioned are very important partners to ours, and they continue to be, and they continue to spend, and we continue to help them with this recovery. And I think we've been finding new ways to help them through this recovery, through providing more data and insights on our end that they can mirror with their data and their first-party data that's really helping them target and make better decisions. And that's really what we're here for. Again, we really don't want anybody participating with us that, doesn't feel like they're seeing a positive return on their investment. And that's not new. That's certainly the work that my team has cut out for them, especially now when business is down. We need to show where these pockets of growth are and where, the demand is coming back, regardless of what region it is, and so that our partners can take advantage of that. And hopefully they see us as a good partner in that.
That's the name of the game. Thanks a lot, Rob. We're out of time. It's great to talk to you.
Great to see you. Wish we were in person. Take care.
Absolutely. Bye.
Thank you, Rob and Dennis. And now for a session sponsored by Critio, we will discuss evolving the online travel advertising playbook for a new era. Please welcome Critio Head of Travel US, Jason Glass, and then moderated by Skift's Creative Strategy Director, Matt Heidkamp.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Today we're talking about how the role of OTA advertising is evolving in the wake of COVID-19, and specifically how OTAs and anyone else who's selling travel online can be using this time to experiment and build deeper relationship with customers. I think this is a sentiment that we've definitely heard in some of these last sessions. We even just heard Rob from Google talk about using this time to take a closer look at the back engine. So today we'd like to welcome Jason Glass from Critio to give us a little bit more insight to where he sits and what he is seeing in the market right now. Jason, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
So to start off, can you just give us a little bit of background on Critio and what its role is in the travel industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So Critio is, historically a performance-based advertising platform designed to help, clients and customers reach users across the open web. I think from a travel perspective, where we really thrive is we collect different intent signals throughout a user's journey. And in doing so, we can then serve them relevant, personalized messages across our supply network at those different stages. I think our real-time algorithms and we have machine learning capabilities that, especially in a time like this when the environment is so fluid, help us kind of be on track when it comes to knowing when and how and what type of cadence and really just all of the aspects of the online travel experience. So I think speaking from our focus as a travel team, it's really been two parts during this time. It's one, and we've heard it from other speakers today, but providing insights, and using that real-time intent data that we have to help inform the travel ecosystem. As well as building our products and rethinking how travelers are responding to different things we might do in advertising, collaborating with our partners, working with oftentimes many of the teams that we do work with across our advertising partners have smaller teams, unfortunately, with everything that's been going on. So we've really made it our duty to try to make their lives as easy as possible and to be that seamless partner that can integrate with some of the really amazing work they're doing to adapt as well.
So from where you guys sit in the industry, where do you see the role of advertising as OTAs in the industry start to recover?
Yeah, I think, first off, it's just being a conduit for educational messaging for consumers. You have obviously cancellation policies have had to change. So being able to, market one-to-one to those consumers and giving them accurate information about what those policies are and where they're going. Cleanliness features and bringing that on-site experience into your advertising program is something that we've really worked hard to do. In promoting new offerings, ancillary products, things that maybe have evolved. We've heard some really cool ideas so far in this webinar, and our job is to make sure we can extend that innovation into the marketing world. And then I think the other piece is it's such an interesting time, and I'm very much a glass half full type of guy. So I look at this as a way to almost reintroduce some travel brands and partners and operators to reintroduce users to their brand again, and using this as another way to create a first impression, an impression that people will hopefully take and use as they go forward.
So as a platform in the industry, obviously you guys are sitting on just a ton of data. What changes have you seen in terms of consumer booking habits in response to COVID-19 travel shutdowns, or even in the recovery phase as some places start to come back?
Yeah, so the first big trend is the booking windows, and we've talked a little bit about it, but to give a more specific data point, earlier in this pandemic, we had seen 2 times the percentage of bookings happening within 3 days of an actual trip. So people are really booking last minute. They're monitoring trends, and they're being conscious of the changes that are happening. Destinations have also changed. We've seen a lot of kind of non-typical tourist destinations pop up. People want to be in places where they have space. People want to be, in outdoors and, influencing some travel to beaches and golf resorts and things like that. From an international perspective, we've really been kind of looking at the trends we've seen in APAC and especially in Europe to kind of give us some guidance on, how travel is starting to evolve here in the States. One kind of funny story is, Critio is a French company, and around this time we always see out of office messages for people taking summer vacation. And it's kind of a trend that we see where people like to go on their 1 to 2 week vacations. And so we've been keeping an eye on that, and luckily we've started to see that improve as well. So people are getting out and about and moving around the countries. And then the last thing I'll call out too is just the importance of a mobile strategy. Mobile bookings, not just mobile web, but also in-app, have increased quite a lot. And I think in large part, this could be due to the work from home mandates that are placed with different companies and people, maybe using their second device to do some browsing while they're working, and certainly feeling more comfortable doing that at home than they are in the office.
And obviously there's a ton of uncertainty right now, both from consumers and from businesses and just the state of the world. So talk to me a little bit about the role of experimentation and how that might be able to help some companies figure out what a recovery plan might look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important at all times. I think now, especially because there's been such a fundamental change to kind of the traveler dynamic, it's even more important. We're kind of thinking of it as, cautious experimentation, if you will. So looking at different, micro characteristics like features in messaging, display frequency, ad formats and things like that. And then also looking at, what companies are doing on a macro level, building new products, adding ancillary products to their mix, and really just helping them kind of understand what's successful, setting up, A/B tests in order to measure effectiveness in certain areas. And, I think it's been an interesting time, but, keeping a good balance between, knowing what to test and also not trying to radically change your entire strategy.
Yeah, and I did find it so funny before how you mentioned the European colleagues you may have whose out of offices messages may or may not be on. I think in the US as well, you see a lot of summer travel and school holidays, which are usually the big times to take trips. So are there any strategies when planning advertising, given this uncertainty and changing nature, given this these current shifts in terms of when and where people are traveling to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, paying attention, being, up to speed on the changes in the environment and the rules and regulations that are happening in different markets, and, keeping an eye on news, joining webinars like this one to understand, how these behaviors are evolving. I think it's really important, to be working with flexible partners, people that can adjust their approach in their advertising message, really seamlessly, whether it be, markets that you want to start to target or maybe pull back from a little bit, but also just being able to adapt in real time. I think that's something we kind of pride ourselves on at Critio, integrating more with different tech partners and different, API connections that you might have. We really want to bring that experience on the platform into an advertising environment. And I think, it's on us to be having these conversations outside of the realm of our clients to make sure that we're set up and ready to go, and we can make that process really seamless. A couple other things I would call out: how are we messaging to people who booked travel back in the spring? People who had to cancel their vacations. What is our approach there? And something that we've seen some success with too is how we're messaging those people around. Maybe you had something booked, a cross-country trip booked earlier in March. Well, let's welcome you back with a message that maybe features some destinations within your, close to your hometown. So using, geo-based capabilities, and also, featuring localized targeting messages in order to encourage that trip, even though it might not have been the one that you were preparing for. And then one other thing too, just getting ready for that inevitable boom in travel. Things still are a little slower here, and things in the US are changing almost daily now, but we all believe that there is going to be a resurgence. So you want to have your program ready to go, and you want to have your mix picked out and your strategy for when that boom does come.
We talked a bit at the beginning here around building deeper relationships with customers and seeing some of the opportunities that this current time does present. So do you think COVID-19 creates an opportunity for OTA marketers to run more advertising, target a broader range of moments, whether that's from the dreaming or planning stage or anywhere else throughout the traveler purchase cycle? So essentially moving beyond just the typical conversion metrics that we look for in OTA marketing campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think right now everyone is sort of dreaming about travel. I might have a trip planned for next weekend that's something, closer to my home, but I'm dreaming about that trip and that big, travel to Japan that we've been planning. And, I think there's a huge captive audience right now who are dreaming. And, I think it's important that OTAs don't disregard that group and, really try to speak to them in a way that's personalized, in a way that can sort of inspire that travel intent and make them feel comfortable, of course, but also, not missing out on that opportunity to capture, people at home thinking about travel. I think you have to kind of also balance the short-term and revenue impacts of making a larger investment in those phases, right? So making sure that you have your attribution systems are lined up properly, where you can attribute, media that might be further up the funnel to an eventual lead or booking. So I think it is, it's super important. I think it's a balancing act, and working closely with your partners to make sure you have a clear strategy, you have a clear measurement strategy, is how OTAs can do that successfully.
So I just wanted to ask one last question, as we just have a few minutes left before we're wrapping up. But what do you think the future of advertising looks like for OTAs and the travel industry in general?
Yeah, I think one thing I think we'll see is greater user centricity, right? Greater control for the consumer. And there's been sort of negative sentiments in the past about travel, and being a consumer of travel, and someone maybe not having a good experience when it comes to cancellations or being able to change the trip that they have planned. And so I think you'll see a lasting effect where companies are going to be more inclined to have flexible options and being more aligned with that end consumer. Mobile strategy, we talked about it being a huge trend that we're seeing with bookings right now. So not just from an advertising perspective, but also making sure you have a program that when you do start to invest money in driving downloads or keeping users retained in the app environment, that you're also messaging them throughout their process and keeping them within your CRM program. And then I think the last kind of trend that really sticks out in Q4, I'm expecting a longer leisure traveler season. So Q4 is typically where you see a lot of holiday travel, family travel, not so much leisure vacations and trips. But as we start to see conditions improve, and hopefully we get more positive news on a potential vaccine, I think you could see some of what that Q4 travel season, sort of the end of the peak season, be extended into towards the end of the year, and maybe seeing families going on vacations together to get away from the house. And certainly that's going to be a trend that we expect into 2021.
Well, Jason, I think we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. And thank you as well for having Critio be a partner with the Skift Research Recovery Index that we have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to work with you guys and other partners on that. And thanks again, Matt. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason and Matt. And next up, we have a discussion with TripAdvisor VP Global Advertising Revenue, Christine Mcguire, and moderated by Skift Senior Travel Tech Editor, Sean O'Neill.
Hello, Christine. Thank you so much for joining us for this event.
Hi, Sean. How are you? Thanks for
having me. Very good, thanks. Where are you based today?
I'm actually in New York City in the financial district, but for a short amount of time, I'm actually wrapping up my life in the city and moving out, like many others, back to North Jersey.
Oh, very cool. Well, I'm in South Jersey here, so welcome back to the great estate.
Yeah, to the Garden State, not to the dirty Jers.
That's exactly right. Thank you for that. You have a great reputation, Christine, for being able to analyze business models, whether it's a legacy company or a digital startup, for what some of the gaps may be in the model and what some of the opportunities may be. So I was wondering, when you joined TripAdvisor back in April 2019, what did you see were a couple of the gaps and what were a couple of the opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I, from the outside looking in, am an avid traveler. So that was number one for me. Do I believe in the company, the mission, and is it something I'm passionate about? But, in really researching TripAdvisor and looking at all of the ways that I've seen scale and a ton of growth for digital media, there's a lot of gaps, but a lot of things that could be leveraged, like the data and scale of TripAdvisor, like no other. The global platform, the signals that we're getting on a minute-by-minute basis, and how that ultimately could inform both data products and targeting. There's as you can imagine, a ton of focus around brand safety. So the trust and recognition and the content moderation process that TripAdvisor has had in place for many years was something that sort of checked that box. And then if you think about branding and big budgets across the marketing landscape, the excitement and joy of travel and the alignment to the new brand strategy work that TripAdvisor was doing with There's Good Out There and people-powered planning were really things that I could anchor a ton on for our marketing partners.
That makes very good sense. So as you look at the back half of 2020, I mean, I imagine the pandemic has kind of thrown the playbook out the window. I mean, how do you think about your ad and marketing spend in the second half when the data is kind of all over the place? And
yeah, I'm used to 12 plus week marketing cycles and, really having pre-planned everything, understanding the bookings and sort of what you need to do to drive towards a revenue number. And all of that has definitely been thrown out the window. So we're really just trying to be there for our marketing partners. Like if I look at holiday season right now, that would always be sort of locked and loaded and our partners and agencies would already know what they're doing. Right now, we're seeing everyone booking in the quarter for the quarter. So they're taking it month by month. And we're sort of there with the data that we're seeing every day change up and down, unfortunately, to help inform those strategies.
I imagine that TripAdvisor shares some of its data with its partners and it helps them inform their strategies. I'm kind of wondering whether TripAdvisor's ad revenue has taken any hit during the pandemic, because we heard earlier from the CEO of Kayaks, Steve Hafner. He said that Kayak has had a hit partly because some of their ads were in the cost per acquisition model and they didn't book through. Some of the second tier online travel agencies went bankrupt. Has TripAdvisor been wrong-footed in any way, or?
Yeah, well, so I'll start with the good news. In April of 2019, I came on and, things take time. We launched 10 new products and we're really starting to get a ton of traction in the end of 2019 into Q1. And Q1, we were on track to have our best media quarter ever.
Wow.
And in March, all of that changed, unfortunately. So that's the reality of the world we're living in. Hotels were 100% vacant, planes were grounded, restaurants were empty. So understandably, the advertising landscape had to take a hit from that, and travel in particular. So Q2 was hard, and we've stated that in our earnings. But Q3 and Q4, we're really starting to see some great momentum. Not back to what it was pre-COVID levels, but better than we thought it was going to be. So we're really excited and bullish about how we can really get out ahead of what we believe sort of the transformation and recovery to look like.
That makes good sense, Christine. Something that you've sort of mentioned at TripAdvisor and TripAdvisor's talked about a lot has been non-endemic partnerships. So I believe the chief financial officer recently said that TripAdvisor was about 200 non-endemic travel clients. Is that about right as an up-to-date number? Or?
Yeah, in Q1, I think we added another 116. So we absolutely have been getting a ton of great traction, and it sort of cuts across spirits, tech, finance, QSR, CPG, and if you think about the reason why, TripAdvisor absolutely is still always going to be core to our travel endemic partners. It's a great fit. It's really natural. It's obvious. But a lot of people have asked, why non-endemic? What non-endemic categories? What's the value proposition? And I look at travel as more lifestyle. What you do when you're traveling and what you buy before you're traveling and when you're traveling is sort of an experience all in itself. So, they're ultimately the best consumers with the largest budgets and most disposable, because they're willing to go above and beyond when they're planning a trip or when they're on that trip. So we've seen a lot of success out Bev right now in tough times. People are at home enjoying themselves. It's the summer. Finance and tech, we started to see a lot of great traction. Auto has a natural alignment with the great outdoors. stores and road trips. And then entertainment brands, actually. So auto, streaming, television, they're looking for uncluttered, brand safe environments, and products like our CRM solution is really helping them fill their business objectives.
I'm glad you gave that color, because I think a lot of people, when they think TripAdvisor, it has to be within the travel sector. And you, as you say, lifestyle, getting across those different. An example of this, TripAdvisor has recently partnered with Stella Artois to do the staycation swap. And when I first heard that, Christine, like a week and a half or so ago, the idea behind it was just seemed so genius. It was one of those things afterward, why do you think that that's sort of something that's good for TripAdvisor to sort of be a part of?
Yeah, it's an absolute part of the travel experience, and continuing to have travel top of mind for our consumers. Like 2020 is a different summer than any other, but it should be as memorable as any other, whether it's being at home with your family, discovering local things that you never would before, or something as creative as the Stella staycation swap, where, there's sweepstakes, and Stella's really leaned into how they can provide experiential elements of the summer 2020 memorable experience.
Okay, before the session, we heard from Jason Glass, who's from Critio, which offers omnichannel performance display advertising tech. And so I was wondering how TripAdvisor sort of thinks about its tech decisions for ads and marketing. What do you choose for insourcing, and what do you choose for when going outsourcing?
Yeah, data is a lot of insourcing. So we have phenomenal engineers and data scientists, and there's been an engine of, analyzing and looking and optimizing our data for a long time. But if you think about media, it's really centered around other platforms that we plug into, whether that's Google's platforms or order management systems. So it's sort of a hybrid. I think anything that we really need to be core and proprietary, like our first party data, is going to be something that's more internal. But then we absolutely leverage the monopolies and external platforms that are ultimately going to make us successful to scale. So we look at the media business as honestly something very different than TripAdvisor has done before. It hasn't necessarily licensed or partnered with platform solutions as much as building, because it has been such a strong product platform. But that is definitely changing, which is a nice thing to see.
Yeah, I can imagine. The Heritage has been trying to do it yourself a lot, so that sounds like it may change a bit. We have an audience question. Deborah Enzenbacher would like to know what TripAdvisor is learning about itself in this pandemic. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
That's a really good question. I think the reality is that you have to sort of self-reflect and hyper-focus in these times to survive them. TripAdvisor has been an extremely profitable, successful company for 20 plus years. And this has hit us hard, like, every other travel company. So we've had ruthless prioritization over the last few months. Like, how can we test and trial things that are going to be very different to our normal business models? How do we have different relationships with our enterprise partners that really help them get out of this struggle, similar to what we're in. So I would say that we're really in a different mode of operation, and skimming things down to the core pillars of where we believe we have a right to win, and then using the time to test and try.
That makes very good sense, Christine. My last question would be, you sort of talk about this media mindset, and your boss, Lindsay Nelson, has also sort of talked about this, bringing more of a media approach to thinking about things. You guys recently sold off about 8 media brands, including Airfare Watchdog, as my colleague Dennis Shaw reported on. How does that help simplify your approach towards media?
Yeah, we divested the Smarter Travel brands, and I'm happy to say that they found a great home with Hop Jump. But TripAdvisor, as I said earlier, has a ton of untapped opportunity. Like, when I came in, I immediately started at building the products and capabilities and integrating new disciplines, but we still have a lot of opportunity and places to go. So we believed that the bigger and better opportunity was really in the one TripAdvisor. If you look at 8 different brands and content-led brands, they take resources, they take people, they take a ton of overhead. So it was really about cultivating focus on the core TripAdvisor brand.
Cool. Well, it sounds like focus is the theme. Thank you, Christine, for giving us the update about TripAdvisor. Good luck enjoy your last moments in FiDi, and hope you're having a good rest of your summer in Jersey.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Jake, the Jersey Jers.
Woohoo! Word.
Thank you, Christine and Sean from New Jersey. Next up, we have a discussion on online travel and lodging, shifts across hotels and vacation rentals. This discussion will feature Expedia Group Global SVP Lodging and Activities, Ait Vanke, and moderated by Skift Hospitality Editor, Cameron Spearance.
Good day, everyone. Cameron Spearance here, hospitality reporter for Skift, and am delightfully joined today by Ait Vanke, Expedia's Global Senior Vice President of Lodging and Activities. Good day, Ait. How goes it?
Thanks, Cameron. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. And firstly, I'm sure there are a lot of people on the call that I know, so I hope everybody's doing well, and I wish you good recovery. For those who do not know me, I run the teams that support you in the field and the teams you call when you need support, so for vacation rentals, hotel, and activities.
Wonderful. Well, before we dive too deep today, as with any sector of travel, let's just address the elephant in the room. Travel demand, limited at best, likely uncertain, likely a whole host of adjectives we could use here. So could you give us an update on how Expedia, as well as lodging in general, has had to adapt to current market conditions?
Yeah, sure. So of course, it's been a very intense time for the whole industry, and we've been laser focused on helping to solve customer and partner problems. So I'm extremely proud of my teams to see how deeply they cared and how hard they worked while all working from home with the extra complications and worries that come with it. And we also have ensured, of course, that our own stability for the future, but we're starting to see the light again. And in fact, in normal times, I wouldn't call it out, but I'm actually here, I'm in a hotel. So our immediate response has been focused on the most critical actions we could take on behalf of our supply partners and travelers. So we developed tools at speed to help travelers cancel en masse, so automated cancellations, while also removing the stress and the admin involved in that process for our lodging partners. We enhanced our self-service offerings, so developing new automated ways for travelers to better manage their bookings. So for example, our chat now functionality gives customers quick access to virtual agent should they want to cancel or understand their options without having to call us up. And then for specific and up-to-date information, our cancellation policies, which continuously change, we've created a dedicated customer service portal where travelers can review their itinerary online. So additionally, many bookings can now be made with a flexible cancellation policy, very, very important to regain that confidence. So nearly 70% of all our rate plans across the Expedia group, they're now refundable. And then we're also restoring confidence with new health and safety amenities. So adding to the listings, also helping lodging partners to get a leg up on the competition when it comes to post-COVID booking. So customers can find property health and hygiene measures under the policy section and the listing on the Expedia group brands.
Great. So with respect to those bookings, I mean, we are seeing Asia probably the furthest ahead in travel recovery. The US domestic market was doing well. It's beginning to show a little bit of volatility. Europe's coming back online. So as travel does come back this summer, can you maybe elaborate on how bookings have looked like for the last month or so?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a lot of last minute bookings, very short booking windows, both for hotels and vacation rentals. So if we look at the Expedia Group search data, that showed that for domestic travelers, for example, who searched within May for July trips, that is going up week on week. So that was a 20% increase there. And then we also did research with a research company at BDRC. We see nearly 40% of our customers asked, plan to book an accommodation, whether that's a hotel or a vacation rental, within the next 3 months. So that might not sound a lot, but there's a huge jump from basically nothing not so long ago. Now, maybe also interesting is the difference leisure and business travel. So we see that come back in different ways. In leisure, we're seeing a shift from holidays abroad to holidays within the country, and that demand is coming back and growing. And then business travel isn't quite the same thing, though we're seeing domestic travel for business coming back as well. So I can talk about what we're seeing with the agencia data. So at the start of July, about 20% of our business travel customers, they told us that we're already traveling, and more than 50% expecting to again start traveling in October. And the main barriers there, of course, in corporate travel is government restrictions and traveler risk management. But what we see is as soon as the market opens up, actually the travelers come.
Great. So I do notice that on your homepage, instead of hotels, it lists stays. Can you maybe tell us what does that signal for the future of lodging?
Yeah, so you noticed that one, Cameron. Wasn't supposed to be a big thing, but we wanted the terminology on our site to reflect our offer to customers. So we updated the wording to be all-encompassing to include short-term rentals along with hotels. Now, travelers today are there's no longer the holiday rental and the hotel-specific person. We know that they may have different types of accommodation needs for different types of trips. So we know they will consider both types in their search. So it's important that both are reflected in how we communicate to our customers.
Great. So on that note, though, we are hearing a lot of claims from the major hotel brands themselves that travelers are going to crave the familiarity that can come with a big hotel brand, largely from kind of a health and safety standpoint. So coming out of these pandemic lockdowns, how does Expedia utilize and maybe position an asset like Vrbo and just sort of the short-term rental market in general?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd say, we worked very closely with our short-term rental and the brands. So I've never seen, I would say, a collaboration like this before. Everybody's in it to try to bring back the market. We know that travelers are most open and willing to look at drive-to destinations as the first step back into travel. And we're seeing indeed encouraging improvements in the travel demand for vacation rentals. You probably heard on a recent investor call that the gross bookings at Expedia Group have moderated year over year in June, and Vrbo has been a large contributor to that. So, but that said, we have travelers for each segment, and travelers take different types of trips, as I said, each year. And our job is to facilitate choices that those travelers make to allow them to book the trip they want. So the most important thing for us now is to work together as an industry to pull us out of this crisis.
Yeah, and I mean, as a follow-up, I mean, are you noticing anything in the data of, are people favoring hotels exponentially more than maybe they were pre-pandemic? Or, I mean, has the short-term rental market been impacted much by, any more worse than the entire hotel industry?
Well, as I mentioned, I say in the Vrbo latest numbers, there were a large contributor to the comeback. Also know some personal friends that for the first time tapped into that category. But we'll have to. So I think it's there to stay. The market is big, so there's growth and opportunity for every type of accommodation. Yeah.
Great. So still staying in the Vrbo space, I mean, we're used to hearing a lot of friction between the hotel industry, labor groups in relation to the short-term rental market. But Expedia pretty remarkably recently signed a labor partnership in San Diego, the first deal of its kind. What was behind that decision?
Yeah, that was a great win. So the beginning of July, Expedia's group, government affairs, San Diego council member, Dr. Jen Campbell, and the local chapter of the labor union, so Unite Here, we signed this memorandum of understanding. And that's really paving a path forward for vacation rental regulations in San Diego. It's a historic agreement. It provides certainty for vacation rental owners and managers, a certainty that we have lacked for more than 4 years, and with real threats of outright bans. So The MOU between Expedia Group, Unite here is a holistic and a balanced solution. So it provides first that certainty for our partners that have been operating responsibly for generations. It establishes responsible limits to address community concerns, and then also it puts good neighborhood guidelines in place to maintain neighborhood quality of life and empower local communities to welcome VRs into their neighborhoods. So we're delighted with the agreement. Our goal is increased collaboration with local communities like San Diego in order to develop sound policies and solutions that address the needs and protect our partners.
Great. And I did notice that Airbnb has been a holdout in that and hasn't signed a similar deal like that in the San Diego market specifically. Is that a potential thorn in the side of the industry as a whole in San Diego going forward? I mean, like, would you want to see them also make a similar deal?
I don't want to talk on the behalf of Airbnb, but I think it does make sense, of course, to sign these agreements and just provide that certainty on the side of owners, and also to foster a healthy tourism ecosystem. So I just hope we're going to see more of that with more partners involved.
Great. So there is belief that disruption is often born or accelerated by a downturn like we're seeing today. I mean, we heard from Rob at Google earlier, there are murmurs Amazon might have their own travel strategies. So, I mean, what industry disruption do you anticipate, and how much of a threat could that be to Expedia?
I wouldn't say disruption. I see that the relationship is stronger than ever with, if I look at owners and brands. So we need to work together to get out of this and to look for ways to reduce friction at every step of the way, to get travelers dreaming of booking and traveling again. So we've seen that historically, the OTA model is a powerful channel to get out of the crisis. So suppliers and customers, they move online to search for and market deals. So there are fewer players advertising and in auction, and so traffic is cheaper. And this will prove true again, getting out of this crisis.
I mean, can you maybe go into a little bit about how do you gain more customers at a time like this, when I know obviously a lot of hotels are with you, but I mean, for some of these operators who are struggling right now, how do you make the argument that Expedia is still worth signing on with at a time when it's still a little financially difficult for these individual hotels?
Yeah, good question. So we surveyed in the beginning of the crisis more than 11,000 of our lodging partners to better understand how we could support the recovery. So the top priority areas as a rebound from the pandemic were demand trends on leisure and domestic travel. They wanted more visibility on Expedia Group sites, and then promotions to engage travelers, and financial relief. So we use these results to inform our recovery program, what we call a Revive and Relieve, so which includes a series of global initiatives, from industry-wide programs to destination targeted rebound to property level relief measures. So to design basically to support travel partners of all sizes. So our program was created to help ease hoteliers with cash flow during recovery, create destination relief via Expedia Group Media Solutions, and boost industry support via what we call Expedia Group Academy. So the financial relief is a mix. We invested 25% of the 2019 compensation we earned from bookings at our partner's property into a marketing fund. And in addition, we are reducing compensation and also extending payment terms on the hotel collect bookings. So the destination relief is a fund that we created with $25 million. It's an advertising relief fund that is available to reignite travel demand to destinations. And then the Expedia Group Academy, we're providing complementary training and education to support upskilling via that platform. So it's a 4-month program with both online learning and modules and live courses designed to help workers and adopt skills to a post-COVID travel environment.
Great. So kind of as an extension of that, I mean, there's also the argument to be made that a pandemic or a crisis is a terrible thing to waste and that there are opportunities to be had. So, I mean, looking ahead, how does Expedia throttle ahead and find some growth opportunities given the current way things stand?
Yeah, so I'd say it's so we have at an accelerated pace, what I mentioned in the beginning. I think that's very important going forward. Brought tools in place to help partners to deal with this situation, removing friction out of the process. And I think that's just going forward, more of that, and keep that pace of innovation to remove that friction out of the process. So I think just expect to see more of that going forward.
Great. Well, before I let you go, I mean, you're in a hotel. Is the hotel stay experience any different today than it was for you the last time you were out traveling?
Probably not, but it feels good. So I think like everyone, craving to get out of the house and to get some travel experience. So I hope we're back to normal very soon for all of us.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Cameron. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. That concludes today's Travels Path Forward Online Travel Summit. Once again, thank you to our sponsor, Critio, and thanks to all of our speakers for sharing their perspective during today's online summit. So we will be sharing the recording of this webinar later this week via forum.skift.com. A reminder again to join us September 21 through 23 for Skift Global Forum, the flagship global conference on the business of travel. This will take place as an online global conference this year in September. So you can view all of our continuing crisis coverage on the industry at skift.com, and very much hope to have you join us again at a future online conference. Take care.